Today is part 5 of our season preview series for MLS. Today we're going to go over two more rivalries, the Florida Derby between Miami and Orlando, and then we're going to go over the nicest rivalry in sports between Sporting Kansas City and Minnesota United. Plus we have a huge lineup prediction that makes a big difference to your strategy for this season, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Alright, so first up on our list for today is Miami, the team that is basically a brand new team as well. Them and Charlotte have a ton of transfers coming in, so we are going to take a look at those. I don't even know if I hit them all, to be honest with you. There's so many that you could say are transfers in, transfers out. They have a huge roster turnover. So we're going to go transfers in: Emerson Rodriguez, Jean Mota, Chris McVeigh, Ariel Lassiter, who's apparently having a pretty good preseason, Bryce Duke, who's apparently hurt, DeAndre Yedlin, Damian Lowe, Clement Diop, and Leandro Campagna. Transfers out: they lose Nick Figal, they lose LGP, that's Leandro Gonzalez-Perez. They lose Lewis Morgan, Kelvin Leardam, Jay Chapman, John McCarthy, Christian McCoon, Matias Pellegrini, and Rodolfo Pizarro. Key youngster, I did say he is hurt. I don't know for how long. I don't know if it's a serious injury or just a little tweak, but I did hear from the Miami reporter that Bryce Duke is hurt, but he has a chance to kind of get in and get a few minutes this year. The midfield is not packed with talent. Really nowhere on this roster is packed with talent. He has got a decent chance to get a little bit of playing time. The biggest loser is La Familia, which is the supporters groups for Miami. I kind of feel bad for them. They've been around. They're one of the better supporter groups in the league, and Miami just has not been able to put together a product that is even stomachable so far. Clearing out everybody and just starting over is probably what they needed to do, but it still stinks for the fans to really not have even really any hope going into this season. This best 11 is really not all that good, but we'll take a look at it. Marsman, Quinteros, and Lowe are the center backs. Gibbs and Yedlin are decent fullbacks. Gregory's a decent piece. Malta slides in alongside of him. I think Higuain's going to play more of a number 10 role this year, is what I was hearing from the preseason. They don't think he's got enough pace to stretch defenses in behind, which is true. So if they drop him back to a 10, let him play a playmaker role, which is kind of what he's good at anyway, potentially that does help them a little bit. And then we see Rodriguez, Robbie Robinson, and Campagna up top. Taking a look at the full roster here, so we have Marsman in goal. Diop is a decent backup goalkeeper, so you do have that. I'm not in love with the center backs here. I don't love having to trust a 21-year-old at center back that's come in this season, but that's what it looks like they're going to do. Otherwise, they got to trust Mabika back here, who is only 23 and not really all that much better. I do think Lowe has to be in there just to provide some sort of veteran presence at the back. Left back, Kieran Gibbs, as long as he's healthy, is a decent piece. They may try to get Jovan Jones in there somewhere because he's a veteran that's been around the league, so potentially maybe they slide somebody over to center back. I'm not sure exactly how they would go about doing that or what kind of formation would look like. They really don't have any great pieces. I mean, Gibbs and Yedlin are the two okay pieces at the back. Lowe is a Jamaica international, so like okay piece at the back, but this defense is really poor. Gregory's a nice defensive mid. Uloa's got a chance. Malta's got a chance. Matuidi, we think, will be gone at some point. I'm kind of surprised he's not gone already. And then Bryce Duke, who I alluded to earlier, has got a nice chance to get some minutes in that central midfield role. I know LA did like him a lot before he came over to Miami. So up top, like I said, we have Gonzalo Higuain, who I think slides back into more of a number 10 role. I think they're going to let Campagna be that forward that's more trying to stretch the back line. But I think Higuain's going to play more playmaker this year. And then Lassiter's had a pretty good preseason, apparently. Robbie Robinson is starting to adapt. He was a 9 in college. This is his third year playing left wing. He was the number 1 overall pick, so he's got some talent. I think this is a really nice chance for Robbie Robinson to kind of break onto the scene a little bit. And then Rodriguez is the other guy. Again, don't love trusting a 21-year-old that's just come in, is not really super hyped, but I don't know that they've got really a lot else. Maybe Lassiter can play on the right wing, and Robbie Robinson can play on the left. But man, they just don't have a lot of pieces here that you're really excited about. Tough for Miami. Potentially they're fighting for trying not to get the wooden spoon, I guess, but man, I just don't see a whole lot of talent. I don't love the coach. I was trying to put together the formation for Miami, and it seemed like they were switching from a back 3 to a back 4 every game. They just don't have any sense of identity under Phil Neville, and they have let's be honest, less talent this year than they had last year, which is a problem because they weren't any good last year. So next up, we've got the Florida rivals for the Florida Derby, Orlando City SC. Kind of a sneaky little transfer window for Orlando. I didn't think they were going to be all that good. They lose a lot of production up top between DK, Muller, and Nani, all gone. But they replaced it pretty well, and actually the players they brought in, I'm a little excited to see. So the big one is Facundo Torres, potentially the best transfer in the entire MLS this year. I really, really like Facundo Torres. Again, with the younger guys, give them a little time. Don't put a lot of expectations or don't rely on them for right up front in the start of the season, but I think eventually he'll be a very good player. Araujo's very good, and then Kara is up top. He sustained an injury in preseason, but it doesn't look like it's too bad. Looks like he should be okay for the season. As we said, transfers out. Daryl DK, Chris Muller, Nani, and Uri Russell are all gone. Key youngster is, of course, Facundo Torres. They'll put some big expectations on him eventually. And I'm really excited to see what he ends up doing because I think he can be one of the most talented players in the MLS. Biggest loser, I think, is Sylvester Vanderwater. He and Benji Michel have been fighting 1-2 for that last forward spot up top. I think Benji Michel is going to probably win out. Both of them will still play regardless. But I think Michel is going to be preferred first choice for now and get his chance to break out. So decent breakout candidate there. Best 11 is going to be Pedro Galese, who is a tank in the back. Antonio Carlos, Jansen are the center backs. Moutinho, who I think is a little underrated. He was a monster 2 years ago. Didn't have a great season last year. Moutinho has a very high potential. Ruan is the right back. Pereira, one of the Pereiras, is going to be holding alongside Urso. The other Pereira plays the 10. And then Torres and Michel, I think, are the two wingers. And then I think Kara ends up playing up top. Taking a look at the full roster here, Pedro Galese obviously is the starting goalkeeper. Antonio Carlos and Jansen are good. Jansen and Schlegel, very interesting battle here for the second center back spot. I don't mind either one of them winning. I went with Jansen with just a little bit more experience in the back, but Schlegel is a decent player. Moutinho on the left, Ruan on the right. Kyle Smith, another one who could have been kind of biggest loser. He is 30 years old, though, starting to get up there, and I don't know that I do like Ruan and Moutinho better talent-wise than Kyle Smith, but he is a very good fill-in back if something happens. Moutinho was dealing with injuries all last year, so Kyle Smith did a really nice job filling in. Pereira, Mendez, Urso, very good midfielders. Araujo will probably get some time in the midfield as well. Mauricio Pereira, I think, is your number 10, and a very good one at that. Facundo Torres, I do expect to slot right into the starting 11. And then you kind of have this battle between Michel, Vanderwater, and Pato. I think Kara ends up being the starter. Pato probably backs up as the number 9. And then I think Michel and Vanderwater kind of switch off for the other spot. Tesho Akindele will probably get some time as well, but he's kind of been more of a super sub type guy for Orlando, and I don't really see that changing. Jack Lynn is also a nice piece, one to keep an eye on for the future. They got him from the MLS Super Draft. Next, we're going to go over Minnesota United. The Loons bring back pretty much everybody that was a big contributor on their team last year. They do lose 2 central midfielders, so a lot less depth in the central midfield, but I think most of their lineup is going to be pretty similar this year. They bring in Halongway, they bring in O'Neal Fisher, and they bring in Kervin Arrega. Transfers out, the only 2 that I could find were Jan Grey Goose and Ozzy Alonso. Key youngster, Hassani Dodson, is going to step into the Grey Goose role, so I expect him to have an expanded role. I think he'll do pretty well with it. Otherwise, they don't really have any youngsters. Dodson, I think, is 23 maybe, so not really what I would define as a youngster, but he is probably the youngest player that should contribute really heavily on this team. And similarly with Biggest Loser, there's really not one. Having not brought in a whole lot of guys and not sent out a whole lot of guys, it's really going to be mostly the same lineup. So Biggest Loser for me, I guess, is Dane St. Clair. The goalkeeper battle is really the one to watch here in Minnesota. Tyler Miller did not start the season last year as the starter. That was Dane St. Clair, who was one of the best keepers in the league in 2020. Dane St. Clair was horrific for the first 4 games, brought in Tyler Miller. He grabbed the job and never let go. He did get COVID for the playoff game, and Dane St. Clair started that. So if Miller gets hurt, if Miller starts to struggle, you could see Dane St. Clair. He's a very, very capable backup and can be very good if given the opportunity. But Tyler Miller has not let go of that starting job up to this point. Also, St. Clair could be a trade potentially if we see somebody like New England lose Matt Turner and they want to bring in somebody that has already some starting experience and is already a very well-cultured player. Dane St. Clair could be a really nice piece to add. They'll probably have to overpay for him because he is younger. He does have experience. But with two really good goalkeepers, Minnesota might want to cash out that and bring in some other pieces to help fill, if there's an injury or something over the summer. Best 11, so again, this is going to be basically the exact same lineup that they used in the playoff game last year. Tyler Miller did have COVID, but I think he's the starter for now. Gasper, DiBiase, Boxall, and Metanire, exactly the same. Trapp and Dotson. Dotson comes in for Alonso, I think started that playoff game, but otherwise exactly the same in the front four. Fragapane, Reynoso, Robin Lod, and Hunu is up top. Full roster, obviously we talked about Tyler Miller and Dane St. Clair, both very capable starting goalkeepers. Emmings is also one to keep an eye on for way down the road. DiBiase, Boxall, and Kalman are the three center backs that will probably rotate in and out. I think, like I said, we're going to just keep the same lineup that they had last year, and Boxall was starting at that point, but Kalman has started in the past, so just keep an eye on that. Gasper is the left back, Metanire is the right back. O'Neal Fisher will provide decent cover at both positions. Will Trapp is the defensive mid. He's a very good defensive mid. And then Dotson is going to slide into that Ozzy Alonso, Jan Grey Goose role. Kervin Orega is one of the guys that they brought in, and I think he just kind of provides a little bit of cover in the back for Minnesota. And then your four guys up top, Lod, Reynoso, Fragapane, and Hunu. There's not really a ton else. Nico Hansen is an okay player. Don Lottie they also bring in as a little bit of cover up front. But I think that's going to be, I don't think they're going to rotate that a whole lot. So those front four are probably going to stay quite a bit. And Reynoso is a really, really underrated player. He has the potential to be MVP caliber if this team really gels together and really kicks on like they could in basically year two of the exact same roster. And then we're going to move to the other friendliest rivalry in sports team, Sporting Kansas City. Interesting offseason for them. They bring in quite a bit, did not lose very much, but they did sustain a season-ending injury, which we'll talk about. Transfers in Robert Volodare, Marino Sonis, Logan Denby, Ben Sweat, Uri Rosell, and Nikola Vunovic. Transfers out Jalen Lindsay and Ilie Sanchez. Key youngster is John Pulskamp, and this is the big lineup decision that I was referencing earlier. I'm actually going to project John Pulskamp is going to win the starting job. Maybe not opening weekend, but I think he plays more games than Melia if they're both healthy for the entire season. I think at least by April or May that John Pulskamp gets in there, and that's a big, big deal as Pulskamp is an under-23 goalkeeper, which as you guys know is worth a ton in So Rare. Biggest loser, Kiri Shelton. I think he has basically the same role, so I don't know calling him a biggest loser is really right, but he's the guy on the team that I think had an opportunity to get a little bit more time, and I don't know that that's really going to pan out for him. So we're going to go to the best 11. Pulskamp, like I said, is going to project as the starter over Tim Melia. Fontes and Izimat Marine are one of the best center back pairings in the league. Ben Sweat, I think, is going to win the job over at Denbei. Cam Duke is going to be on the right back spot. I think Graham Susi probably starts the season, but again, this is another spot where I think Kansas City's going to rotate a little bit. Cam Duke has been waiting for his opportunity, and Graham Zusi just continues to be ageless, but I think this is finally the year where Zusi fades into that background role and Duke kind of takes that spot away. The three midfielders for Sporting Kansas City, Gadi Kinda, Remy Voltaire, and Uri Rosell. Rosell coming back to the team after previously being on Sporting Kansas City, so he knows the coach really, really well, and I think he is the one who ends up winning that third spot. And then the front three, two of them will never surprise anybody, Saloy and Russell. It's the number 9 position that's really up for grabs. That could be Kira Shelton. I'm going to project Vunovic, who's their new signing. And finally, taking a look at the full roster. So we have Amelia and Pulskamp, who are the big two for the goalkeepers. Again, Pulskamp earns that number 1 shirt, so I think he ends up getting the job at some point. Fontes is a good center back. Isimat Marine is a good center back. Volodare, I think they bring in as more depth and as more for the future as a 20-year-old. The 32-year-old and the 30-year-old, I think, are your starters on a normal day. But again, I think Volodare will get some time, and then want to see what they got for their transfer in. On the left, fascinating battle between Sweat and Denbe. I'm not sure if Sweat is going to be healthy. I think he is. I think he sustained that injury early enough last season to where he should be full go by this point. But this will be a fascinating battle throughout the season. Ben Sweat is a very solid starter. And Dembe is a Belgian U20, U23, something like that, player that they've just brought in. I think he's the future at left back for Kansas City. But it'll be interesting to see which one wins that battle. And then exactly the same battle going on the other side between Duke and Zusi. The only difference is Duke, I don't think, is quite as good as Ndembe, and Zusi is not quite as good as Ben Sweat anymore. So I think the right back spot is a little worse, but I think Cam Duke ends up winning that spot from Graham Zusi. In the midfield, again, they play a 4-3-3, so Uri Rosell is going to get my final midfield spot. But Voltaire is good. Mauri will see some time as well. Felipe Hernandez will see some time. Gadi Kinda is locked on starter. Voltaire, I think, is pretty locked on. I think he's the second midfielder. And then Uri Rosell would be the third guy, so I think he'll be more of a rotational starter. And then up top, they've got some heavy hitters up top. Saloy and Russell are nailed on starters. Sonis is going to provide really good cover and be a future piece that they can develop. Really, really talented player. Polito is your big injury so far this season. He'll miss this season, which opens up that number 9 role. Kiri Shelton and Vunovic are probably going to rotate pretty heavily there, but Shelton can also play both of the wing spots. So I think we'll see Sionis at times, and I think we'll see Shelton move around all over the front three like he did last year. And I think Vunovic is going to be the starter up top. That's it for this time. Until the next time, Vamos United.